Urban exploring, you're set out to find new trails, and suddenly, you get this overwhelming feeling that says, I better get out of here. Guys, what's your story? Presented by Midnight Monster is 8 stories of urban explorers that think they should get out right now. I have a long and creepy as fuck story about heebie-jeebies and why you should never ever ignore them. Sounds made up, but I promised, it happened. When I was growing up, my uncle owned a cabin in the middle of the woods up north. It was a small housing community, maybe 50 houses in the middle of the woods, meaning you had to drive 5 miles down a dirt road, then make a few smaller turns here and there. No signs or anything until you were in the community, so the only way to know it was there was if you owned property. Every summer, we would spend a weekend there with my extended family. It was 20 to 30 people. We'd tent outdoors around the cabin and have a good old time. One game we liked to play was survival, which in hindsight was a terrible idea because it was the 90s. They had dune buggies, so what we would do is kids would team up into 2 teams. Each team would be blindfolded and driven down the back trails deeper into the woods, then led on foot even deeper into the woods, sit in a circle and wait for the parents to start leaving in the dune buggy. And then, once we heard them drive away, we could take off the blindfolds. The team who got home the fastest wins, and as an added challenge, the white flag was previously hidden in the woods. So, if you found the flag, you got half an hour shaved off your time. We were given a long-range walkie-talkie in case of emergencies. So, here we are. A group of 5 cousins aged 5 to 15, me being the oldest, in the woods with no idea how to get back to the cabin. Each team had one of my uncle's daughters who knew the woods, so it was harder than it sounds to get lost. But it happened previously. The final time we ever played, the entire team we were in the woods. Me and my cousin, who was a year younger than me, kept getting the heebie-jeebies. Normally, we go for the flag because it's pretty easy. But this time, we just both collectively felt the whole, nope, let's get the fuck out of here feeling. We made it back to record time flagless. My uncle went to go get the flag after we left, and when he came back, he was very upset. He pulled me and my cousin aside and sternly told us if we were playing a prank. We better tell him right now. We had no idea what he was talking about, so he told us that someone had moved the flag from one tree to another. So, someone was possibly watching us. That night, everyone had to sleep in the cabin on the floor because they were so scared someone may have followed us back. We could never play survival again after that day. Years later, when we were older, we asked about it again. He went to the garage and came back with the flag which he had kept, along with this rusty old knife. He told us that it wasn't that someone just moved the flag. They stabbed it into another tree with this old, rusty knife, which had blood dripping onto the flag. Written on the flag is some marker that said, "If you kids scream, I will gut you like a fish." Someone was out there. We're thankful we did not try looking for the flag. Exploring the grounds of a big old New England mental institute's campus at night. It's a full moon, but pitch is black inside because the windows are so dirty. Being dumb kids before smartphones, we did not comprehend with a lot of light, and we're mostly navigating by 2 flashlights between our group and the moonlight when outside. We're in the main building and most of what you would expect. 60s to 70s decor, peeling paint, a couple of weird-looking chairs, and 2 legit rubber rooms. A movie was shot there at some point, and some of the walls are burnt from a stunt or something, I guess. There are 2 stairwells in the building on either end, and we have to keep alternating between them because there's stuff in the way. We keep going through the floors until we reach the roof. The roof doors are these big, heavy, metal solid doors. The far stairwell door won't budge at all, so we go back down and try the other stairwell. This one we can see is kind of wedged open, and the top corner of the door is bent back, letting light in. We squeeze out onto the roof and walk around for a bit. I happened to be holding the flashlight and turned it back to the door. The door wasn't just bent, it was straight up peeled back open like a tuna can. There were these 3 huge scratches and scars that I could only describe as claw marks, each one as long as an adult's forearm. I lost my shit and insisted it was time to go. We made a quick retreat out of the building, but it was a still good 2 to 3 minute walk back to our cars, which was definitely the most terrifying part of the night. No idea what could have made those marks. Just really glad we did not decide to go into some other buildings that were sealed up. You had to enter those through some underground tunnels, steam tunnels, that connected the buildings, and the entrance was so sketchy. My friends and I spent the whole winter of 2013 urban exploring, and it was incredible. But our last incident is what left us swearing to never do it again. It was 2 a.m. and we decided to hit the local abandoned asylum. Now, this was a 20-acre complex, complete with its avenue and several different buildings. The road leading in was through a gate that was usually never open, but that night it was, and we were able to comfortably drive up to the field grass facing one of the buildings. This is where we sat, our car completely shut off in the dead of winter, just passing a bowl of weed back and forth. The building we were facing was the morgue, and we were a little ways off but almost directly in line with the front door, which was closed. I remember the wind that night, so cold, so loud, its whistles scratching our ears and blowing against the car. We were in high school and high school kids just enjoying the atmosphere, and it wasn't until our 3rd bowl of weed that we realized the door of the morgue was shut, was now wide open. In an hour, someone had scampered through the field next to us, shimmied their way to the morgue, and snuck into them without us noticing. The realization that someone knew we were here, that we were being watched, and that someone had slipped past our noses threw us in a panic, and we decided to leave. My friend quietly started the car and reversed out of the grass, back to the gate that he entered, only for us to realize someone had shut us in. So here we are, 3 high school kids high off our asses, and our exit point completely sealed off. Now, there was another exit way down the road, but if we weren't thinking rationally at this point, it was no longer a game or a night out with the boys. Someone was here with us, and their moves were calculated, deliberate. We took a left and drove down the avenue, further into the complex, hoping to find an exit that we could squeeze through in our vehicle. The avenue led straight into the complex, and on each side was a different building. Everything was so empty, so abandoned, but the feeling of being watched stayed with us. We could not shake the fact that we were being followed. The avenue eventually stopped at a dead end to our left. It was the main building with a chain fenced out to the right was a grass field, and also a dirt road and a children's playground. We were stuck at this as we sat, completely vulnerable and our sides and backs completely exposed. The place was so big, anyone could have been anywhere. And the building we sat across was 13 floors. Its architecture straight out of a horror movie. My friend decided to turn the car to turn the lights on so we'd face the avenue we drove down. We rolled down our windows so we could see better and turned the radio slightly up to break the silence. It was almost like we were making a stand. In hindsight, it was a dumb fucking decision, but we did not want to go further into complex and we did not want to drive back. So we sat and waited, knuckles gripping the steering wheel and our blood pressure rising, eyes glued to the road. Not even 5 minutes later, I swore I heard something and shut the radio off. Because we made a U-turn, the main building was to our right, and that's where I heard something. It sounded like a pop. One of those shitty firecrackers that you toss on the floor. I kept hearing that pop over and over from the top floor of the building that was supposed to be abandoned. The fence was padlocked and there was no way anyone could get through the gate, but I swear to you, I heard the sizzling of the firecracker at the pop noise. It would make it when it hit the floor over and over again. At this point, my friends and I are terrified. Was this a scare tactic? Are we supposed to leave? Suddenly, the firecracker stopped and the silence was almost deafening. For 1 minute, whoever was up there decided firecrackers weren't effective. The noise was immediately replaced by pots and pans banging together. Somewhere on the 11th floor, Someone decided that banging pots and pans together in an abandoned complex at an ungodly hour was the right way to scare these high school kids. It was obvious we're not wanted here. Someone's trying to get us to leave, but why close the gate? Why force us down the dead end and let us sit here? All these questions, but no answers. It was at this point I told my friends and we need to leave. If we have to ditch the car, so be it. Whatever it is, we have to get the fuck out of here and we have to do it now. I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the macho attitude, but my friends doubled down and said no. We sit here and whoever is fucking with us comes out and talks to us. So homeboy decides to roll all our windows down and blast the radio and start screaming at the top of his lungs. It was childish. It was dangerous and completely irrational, but my other friends and I were completely bewildered. Our efforts to calm him down only bolstered an effort, so we just let it happen. It wasn't until I saw headlights in our rearview mirror that I told my friend, "Let's fucking go." My friend did not even look. He heard the panic in my voice and floored it. That little 2006 Mitsubishi held its weight that night, and so we sped down this broken avenue, no idea where to go, and this mystery car tailgating us the whole way. We were picking up speed and doing a clean 60 miles per hour, and this car was tailgating us the whole way through, and even trying to get in front of us once, high-beaming us, honking, and dangerously swerving, anything to get us to stop. I could not get the make or model of the car because it was dark, but we weren't taking any chances. We drove down the avenue and straight out of the complex. What we did not know before was that the avenue eventually led out into a neighborhood it was situated in, and the gate we entered was merely a side entrance. Eventually, the car behind us tapered off, and once we were a couple miles away, lost in the side streets, my friend pulled over and we sat there processing what just happened. What was so unnerving about the whole situation? If there was a cop or security guard, wouldn't they have just announced their presence and told us to leave? What was opening the door of the morgue, following us, and using scare tactics all about? Where the fuck did the sedan come from? The dangerous driving almost forcing us off the road, and all that seemed so frantic. Was this just a sick game someone was playing on us? A prank to scare some trespassing high school kids? I wish I had the answers, but we never will find out. Decided to solo mission an abandoned church. Dropped down through a window into the basement. After wandering through some hallways, I found a large room with the stairs to the main level at the other end. Started crossing the room when I heard footsteps above me. It sounded like somebody walking with crutches or a peg leg, making a weird thunk, 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 thunk sound. The steps seemed to be going in a circle. I paused for a minute. I'd had run-ins with homeless people before that were generally amiable. I'd make small talk for a minute, give them a smoke and some change, and everything would be hunky-dory. I wasn't normally scared to run into them. This time, I had a weird bad feeling about, hesitating. I took a couple more steps towards the stairs. I was so focused on the noise above me that I accidentally kicked an empty spray paint can, which clattered away along the floor. The footsteps above me stopped for a moment. Then whatever it was began running, still making that same thunk noise towards the stairs. I was about to start climbing, and I was suddenly more terrified than I've ever been in my entire life. I sprinted full tilt back to the window I'd come through as whatever it began running down the stairs, and somehow managed to quickly claw my way up and out. I did not look back until I was safely out of the building, at which point I could neither hear nor see anything. I waited outside for a few minutes, but apparently, whatever or whoever it was, decided scaring me off was good enough and had retreated into the building. Slightly spooked, about 3 weeks later, I went back with a couple friends and we made our way into the building and up the stairs without incident. Inside the church, we found obvious evidence of multiple homeless person living there. There were mattresses set up in the corners, small fires that have been lit, etc. Most of it was fairly normal. However, on the windowsills, we found multiple birds and small mammals, all of which had been beheaded and their bodies carefully lined up. After pursuing and photographing the main sanctuary, I and one friend made our way to the third floor, which had classrooms and offices. Coming up the stairs, I could see the door to a room off the landing at the very top. As I got to the last few stairs, the door abruptly slammed shut. The room had been dark and not appear to have any windows, and I could not feel a breeze or see any windows looking down the hallway from the top of the stairs that could have pulled the door shut. My friend tried to open the door and said it felt like there was something on the other side pushing it shut. We elected not to explore the third floor after going downstairs, and consulted with our other friend. It was decided we should leave. About 3 years later, I revisited that church, and when I came to the top of the stairs, I found the door to that room wide open. Shining my flashlight in, I confirmed that the room had no windows. That church is fairly well known in the local exploring community, and while several people have said they got a bad feeling or felt creeped out, nobody else had had any kinds of encounters. I assume the first incident was a homeless resident trying to scare me off. The dead animals were the work of an unmedicated schizophrenic, and the slamming door was a homeless person not wanting his nap or high disturbed by some dumb kids. That said, the whole experience was hair-raising, and I still bring it up as an antidote for new explorers on why you should never explore alone. I went to Greystone Asylum in New Jersey before it was demolished. Absolutely beautiful architecture, by the way, for anyone who's never been. Highly recommend you Google a picture. Anyways, after gaining access to the building, we found the lights were still on. Weird considering the building had been abandoned for so long. We just looked around the area checking things out. The place reminds me of the Resident 2 Evil Police Station game. We got to the top of the main building where the chapel's located and everything's pristine, except for the fact that the enormous cross behind the pulpit is upside down. Okay, a bit weird, but people have done that before. That's when we started seeing and hearing things. Hallways we had passed coming up are now dark. You can hear things scuttling about in the darkness. Just mice or raccoons or something, we told ourselves. Then we decided to explore the lower end of the building. So, to preface, there's a series of underground tunnels that were used to transport more violent patients from one of the satellite buildings to the main building for doctor's appointments. At the entrance of the underground transport tunnel, the air grows colder even though it's June. We're underground, of course it is. No lights are leading down this barren concrete pathway, only the inky darkness in front of us, and our flashlights can even seem to penetrate. As the path begins to gently curve, we begin to see a glow of light ahead of us. As we approach this, it's the first light we've seen down here yet. Well, beside our flashlights. It's coming from a room set off from the transport corridor, maybe an office or a storage area. We decide to see what's inside. The room is completely devoid of anything except a thick coating of dust on the bare concrete. In the middle of the room, the light we noticed was coming from an ordinary table lamp set on the floor. It wasn't until we noticed the lamp was not plugged into anything that we decided to get the hell out of there. There's a place in Liverpool, UK called Mossley Manor. A stunning old nursing home inside. It's been left to rot, but there are a lot of left behinds. Pictures, files on residents. The place was shut down over cruelty to the residents. In fact, one of the files I read discussed how police were called over a resident, as paramedics arrived at them having passed, yet staff said they died in the ambulance. Anyways, I know this place inside and out. It's a beautiful building with a horrible history. It's fantastic for photos and digging into the past. I would go once a week and bring friends, teach them how to respect history. Well, one day, I had a feeling. I'm not a huge paranormal believer, but I had that feeling something was watching me. What? I don't know, but I felt it had always been there, like it allowed me to feel confident before, so it could get me now. What would it do to me? Fuck, who knows, but I've never been back. I have a friend who's into his spooky memes. He was giving me some shite about negative energy manifesting into a poltergeist. He could be right, I would rather not know. My wife and I are exploring a huge old YMCA-type building in Detroit. The place was completely intact with all doors and windows boarded shut except for one. Even though it was midday, the interior was completely dark inside, forcing us to navigate with flashlights. It was a typical old Detroit building with all wood floors, some of them carpeted over, that made a fair amount of noise as we moved about. I think it was either 4 or 6 stories tall, about half a city block long, and somewhat narrow. The place had been added on to several times in its life, which gave it disjointed maze-like quality. We slowly worked our way from one end to the other, just seeing what we could see. We'd been in there for an hour or two and had made it to the front entrance, when suddenly we first heard the sounds of someone else moving around inside the building. I placed the sounds deeper into the building and on a different floor from us. We'd come onto the explorers in the past, and it was no big deal. We usually gave each other a wide berth, and this building was boarded up so tightly and was so dark, it felt claustrophobic. The halls were long and narrow, and we'd have to go right past whoever was in there if we wanted to reach the end on the same floor. Also, this place was closer to downtown than we've ever explored, and we could not rule out that cops or some kind of security patrol. So, for a multitude of reasons, we did not want to run into whoever it was. We checked the front entrance, which was, of course, boarded up tightly. The sounds of movement continued towards us, hesitantly. After a minute or two of listening quietly, I realized that I was hearing was quietly moving, then stopping to listen, then moving again. Then they were trying to pinpoint our location in the building, which made me want to run. And unfortunately, we had to go past them on another floor, since the only way out was the opposite end of the building where we'd come to. Not cool. I grabbed my wife's hand, and we ran for a few flights of stairs to put some distance between us, and whoever else was in there with us. We quickly worked our way back through the building, moving as fast as we dared in the dark. And when we stopped to listen, we heard that the other person in there with us had equally picked up the pace. They were moving along quickly, maybe 2 to 3 floors below us, and no longer cared about being heard. God damn it. It took us approximately 20 minutes to work our way back to the back entrance where we had come in. The other party tried to find us in there the entire time. It felt like we were trapped in a B horror movie. Fortunately, we were quicker than they were and got the hell out of there before they could catch us. We ran back to when we were parked and drove away before they came out. We never saw who it was. Kinda late, but might as well share since I've never bothered to write it all out before. I wasn't exploring an abandoned school and half of the urbex side of things, and half of the building had a reputation for being super haunted. I live for that stuff, so win-win. I'm also not very easily scared when it comes to paranormal stuff, because 99% of it can be explained with normal logic. Anyways though, I'm in the old theater auditorium of this school that's waiting to be condemned, and it's beautiful, and a very specific, holes in the ceiling, walls, and floors, asbestos tiles crumbling everywhere, dusty light from the windows way, if that makes sense. Though I haven't fact-checked this, a girl died on the stage during a school play in the 50s or 60s, after she tripped down the stairs from the catwalk and broke her neck. I knew her name at the time but can't remember it now, but what happened was that my spirit box said the correct name back to me, after I climbed up on stage and asked if anyone was around. That's not even the creepy part, just the part that got me excited and adventurous. I walked around a few floors of the building but kept avoiding the basement boiler room. I had very bad vibes just walking past the stairs leading to it, but I'm curious to the core and I went down there. I did not turn the spirit box on because the static was super loud. I wanted to try to get a walkthrough video quietly. I made it to the boiler room and there was a rusty chain blocking it off, with a sign of rotted mold and hazards, etc. I hopped over it. I was breathing that shit in the whole time. Anyways, I did not care about that, but for some reasons I knew that crossing that chain was a big deal and a bad idea. As soon as I'm through the doorway, I hear a loud, laughy, choky noise like, Like someone was trying not to laugh and hold their breath but could not help it. I must have developed sonar at that moment because I ran up the crumbling stairs in the pitch dark without a horror movie trip moment. I felt the whole time like someone was right behind me, smiling and running but just toying with me. I have not gone exploring since then, and just thinking about it again makes my spine tingle. Whatever it was a living person or something else, I'll never know. Midnight Monster here. That was 8 stories of urban explorers. If you enjoyed today's content, do hit that subscribe button and know Midnight Monster releases daily videos, and I hope to see you in the next one.